Think about the very last time you got a super suspicious email. You probably knew exactly what to do, right? You don't click the link, and you definitely don't download the attachment. It's basically Internet Survival 101. But what if those rules have completely changed? Today in this explainer, we are diving deep into the terrifying evolution of malware. We're going to trace how it morphed from these simple, kind of annoying digital pranks into totally invisible, military-grade weapons. To give you a sense of scale, look at this number, $38 billion. That is the inflation-adjusted damage caused by just one single worm, MyDoom, way back in 2004. But here's the thing. The real nightmare, it actually isn't the massive financial cost of those past attacks. The real nightmare is an invisible, zero-click weapon that we're going to unpack at the end of this explainer. Keep that in the back of your mind, because by the time we wrap up, you are literally going to look at your smartphone in a completely different way. So to understand this zero-click nightmare, this open loop we've got, we really have to start at the beginning. Part 1. From pranks to profits. In the early days, malicious software was mostly just small-scale extortion. It was literally spread by handing out physical floppy disks, like the AIDS Trojan back in 1989. But obviously, the internet changed the game entirely. We went from floppy disks to the mass emailing worms of the early 2000s, to actual physical sabotage by 2010. Straight to the modern zero-click espionage we see today. It is a crazy, rapid trajectory where malware gets incredibly sophisticated while needing less and less human error to actually work. Now, to really grasp this massive escalation, we've got to understand what a worm actually is. See, a traditional virus needs you to actively run a program to infect your computer. A worm? It doesn't care what you do. It specifically targets vulnerabilities in operating systems so it can install itself and just spread aggressively through a network, completely on its own. This kind of autonomous behavior is exactly what allowed the early internet to be weaponized on such a massive scale. Take the Melissa virus from 1999, for example. It used a malicious word attachment disguised as an important message or, a list of passwords to adult websites. Once you opened it, it hijacked Microsoft Outlook and immediately emailed copies of itself to the first 50 contacts in your address book. And then, just a year later, the I love you worm disguised itself as a digital love letter. These early attacks completely exploited human curiosity. They tricked users into clicking, and man, it worked flawlessly. I Love You alone infected 45 million people and caused roughly $15 billion in damages. By 2004, the MyDoom worm was so devastatingly effective that at its peak, it was responsible for 25% of all emails sent globally. Literally 1 out of every 4 emails. Let that sink in for a second. A quarter of all global email traffic was just malicious code spreading itself around, trying to build massive cyber armies for denial-of-service attacks and leaving backdoors wide open for remote control. Which brings us to part 2, weaponizing the web. So, as the web grew more complex and became deeply integrated into global finance, cybercriminals totally shifted their focus. They went from just causing chaotic digital vandalism to highly targeted financial extraction. Enter the Trojan. Unlike a worm, a Trojan disguises itself as desirable code, maybe a game, a totally normal app, or a PDF file. You think you're downloading something safe, but the attacker gains remote control of your system. The 2007 Zeus Trojan used this exact disguise technique, hiding in emails and fake websites to copy keystrokes and steal over $100 million through compromised bank logins. And Trojans eventually paved the way for something far, far worse: ransomware. In 2013, CryptoLocker used a massive encryption key to completely lock up data on over 200,000 Windows systems. By 2016, Petya was blocking out entire operating systems. And then in 2017, WannaCry took the whole thing global. It entirely halted operations for massive global corporations like FedEx and Nissan. And critically, it shut down actual hospital systems until a ransom was paid. The financial stakes here became absolutely apocalyptic. WannaCry caused over $4 billion in damage worldwide. Petya, that reached a staggering $10 billion. This was the era where the web was being fully weaponized for profit, literally holding the world's most critical infrastructure hostage. But just as we start getting comfortable analyzing all this financial data and corporate extortion, we have to ask a genuinely terrifying question, one that takes us out of the digital realm entirely. What happens when malicious code escapes the screen and enters the physical world? Let's look at part 3, physical sabotage and Stuxnet. This marked a major historical escalation. For the first time, code was engineered not to steal your passwords or demand money, but to destroy actual physical hardware. Discovered in 2010, the Stuxnet worm was a highly sophisticated cyber weapon. It was reportedly developed by intelligence forces, widely attributed to the US and Israel, and it had one very specific target. It was designed to physically disrupt the industrial controllers that managed uranium enrichment in Iran's nuclear program. And what's totally wild here is that Stuxnet didn't even need the internet. The target facility was what's called air-gapped, meaning it had zero connection to the outside web. So the malware was deployed physically via USB drives. Once it was inside, it exploited numerous unknown Windows 0 days and spread silently until it found the exact industrial software it was looking for. It literally spun physical centrifuges out of control until they were destroyed, all while feeding normal-looking diagnostic data back to the human operators so they wouldn't suspect a single thing until it was way too late. Which brings us to part 4, the zero-click era. Okay, so we've seen how malware tricks us, how it steals from us, and how it can destroy physical hardware. But the absolute cutting edge of modern cyber warfare completely removes human error from the equation entirely. Remember that open loop from the beginning of our explainer? Pegasus is a highly advanced mobile spyware toolkit developed by the Israeli firm NSO Group, and it's licensed to governments for targeted intelligence gathering. As the quote says, it requires absolutely no action, no clicks, and no interaction from the target to succeed. There's a very stark contrast here. The old paradigm of malware relied 100% on human interaction. You had to make a mistake, right? You had to be tricked into opening a bad file, clicking a sketchy link, or plugging in a random USB drive. But modern malware, powered by zero-click exploits, it bypasses the human entirely. It installs silently, leveraging invisible vulnerabilities deep within the code of apps you already trust. Let's actually break down exactly how this works, using the 2019 WhatsApp zero-day exploit as an example. Step 1. The attacker simply places a voice call to the target's WhatsApp account. Step 2. The malicious code executes during the ringing process itself, literally before anyone even picks up the phone. Step 3. The Pegasus spyware silently installs on the device. Boom. It grants total surveillance over messages, cameras, and microphones. A single missed call is all it takes to completely compromise a device. Part 5, Surviving the Invisible Threat. So as we enter this era of totally silent infiltration, why does all of this actually matter to you? The reality is that our defense mechanisms today have to be systemic. For everyday users and businesses alike, you can no longer just rely on the old advice of don't click suspicious links. Maintaining rigorous security updates, applying software patches the second they are released, and utilizing advanced gateway solutions are absolutely critical for our digital survival right now. These actions are what close the invisible loopholes that these zero-click weapons rely on. Because if these threats are evolving to bypass human interaction entirely, how are you fortifying the systems that you rely on every single day? If malware no longer needs your click, how do you protect the data you can't even see? Thanks for exploring this complex evolution with us today. And seriously, stay vigilant out there.